Slowly people are joining, not many have joined. Slowly people are joining. Wait a minute or two before we start, okay? Okay, I'll share. Okay, we are still in the. Okay, good morning, everyone. The class begins now. We are still in the inference part, statistical testing part. So we have learned some important terminologies that are being used in any statistical testing, like starting from what is an inference, what is testing, simple hypothesis, composite hypothesis, type 1 error, type 2 error, power function, and all those stuff. Okay, a lot of terminological subtleties involved in this. That's why I took a particular direction which I have taken in this. So it could be different from what some of you may have learned in your undergrad, but the main idea, the final idea, the destination will be the same. I have a question. I have an example that will explain shortly the way you might have done in your undergrad, which is not different at all from what you have seen so far. Okay. Okay. Let's let us start today's lecture with this example. And what is this example? Take this down. Let x1, x2 is a random sample. X1, x2, xn is a random sample, and n tuple from the normal distribution mu and 100. This is a very important assumption that the variance is known. If the variance is not known, it makes life a bit difficult for us. We have to estimate it. When you use an estimator for variance, it will be a different distribution, which we have seen already. So that is my next next section, how to do hypothesis testing when from a normal distribution, given a normal distribution, when both the mean and the variance are not known. That will introduce to us something that we have not seen so far, that confidence intervals, which is also a very important part of statistical inference. It's very simple. We'll introduce the confidence intervals, and from there, that will give us an idea how to develop a test in case both the mean and the variance are not known. In this case, a lot of other complications. 6, 7, normally in the literature, 6, 7 such permutation combinations are analyzed. We don't have time to do, we need not do everything. What is normally done, we will see. And after that, some more examples. Today, I'll stop with whatever I have, because the F test, there are two other tests that we have to analyze, the F test and the example for chi-square test. With that, our inference part will end. So we'll take some more examples. We'll do some more examples in the class. And I'll also send you some practice questions to on the statistical inference and how to use Chebyshev inequality and all those stuff. That's the whole idea. So hopefully it won't be. We will see up to what all I have. My other PPTs, I have to make the bullet points. I have to make it on the F and the T stat, F and the chi-square stat, and the explanation. And probably on Monday we'll finish off any remaining portion on statistical inference and begin the econometrics portion. Okay, so that's what. Now go through this. That's the idea of this this month. I think econometrics begins, and we'll see one after another. And in the econometrics section, as I told you before, I will introduce to you, apart from least squares estimation, maximum likelihood estimation, the aspects of maximum likelihood estimation, very tough. The asymptotic properties and all those stuff are very, very tough. And so we will have to assume that many things, what is called the regularity conditions, when we discuss maximum likelihood estimation, we assume that they exist. Proving this is it's beyond the scope of this particular course. And after that, we'll see a bound, and we'll see how to estimate for all the situations that we've seen while discussing least squares, and then the dummy variables. And that's where our portion ends. Okay, this is how it goes. February 9th is the last date, right? Hello, February 9th is the last date?
Yes, sir.
So if need be, I may take one more special lecture I planned. If need, I may take 1 or 2 more special lectures also. Okay. Suppose I take the special lectures in the evening. Is it okay? What happened? Somebody said it was a problem. Evening 4 o'clock will be all right. If you take any more special lectures apart from the one planned.
So MSc students have their class on Tuesdays, Thursdays and Saturdays, 2:30 to 4. So it may extend for like 4:15.
Okay, suppose I have it at 4:36 or something, it should be all right, right?
Yes, sir.
4:30, all right. Okay, I'll fix it. I'll take I'll fix if needed. I'll fix it only after consulting the class. Okay, so now proceed with
also,
this.
sir.
Yeah.
So the last date of this semester is 5th February, not 9th.
Oh, 5th February.
Yes, sir. I just checked the academic calendar and it's 5th and not 9th.
Oh boy, 5th February happens to be a Friday, right? 5th February happens to be a Friday.
Yes,
Okay,
sir.
we'll see. I think I may need 1 or 2 special lectures, extra lectures for econometrics portion also. We'll see, because I have a bunch of examples to discuss, so that I'll send all these examples to you, and after that we'll discuss. That will be easier. I ask questions and you answer. That will be easier. That is the way I am thinking of proceeding. Okay. This is the problem setup. We use the rule to reject H0 and accept H1 if and only if X bar is greater than 62. What are the consequences of this test? From a power function analysis, we know that pi mu equal to p x bar. Recall here, I always said pi mu bar delta, where delta is the test procedure. An unnecessary notation, so I have dropped it. So it's pi mu. There is some test procedure behind this. Moreover, here there is no test statistic that you are going to. Okay, x bar, it can be considered a test statistic. So for to avoid clutter, let me drop this delta. That much less time for me to type. So this is a power function analysis that you are seeing. Pi mu is equal to p x bar greater than or equal to 62. Recall your power function thing. What is that? What is you have the power function in front of you, right? So what is that part that is relevant here? I have written the part that is relevant here. And what is that part that is irrelevant from the power function? Our formula for power function?
Less than 62, sir.
That part is irrelevant. So I have calculated this. So this is the probability of rejecting the null of 60 by using this particular test. Okay. What is this? 1 minus pi 62 minus mu by 2. As mentioned before, the probability pi mu of rejecting is called the power function of the test. At the value mu1, okay, all the doubts that you might have had, this is how you must have been approached in undergrad. They might have approached you only this way. Am I right? No response?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
This is the way. The only difference why I took this route is the following. I told you before, how to use this power function or decide the critical level or alpha significance level for any distribution other than normal. 2, when the null is not so simple as something greater than equal to or something less than equal to, how to do if the null is between an interval, and for other distributions like uniform and exponential. So that is why. So that part, the way we have defined it, it will be more useful than this. But in textbooks, if you see, only normal distribution and greater than or equal to null or less than or equal to, that's it. And second thing, this null between two intervals has been discussed in for binomial distribution, which is much easier, but not for even normal distribution. So it's good to know that. So that is why it's the same as the. What is it now? Now some terminologies which you've been asking all along. As mentioned before, the probability is nothing but the power function of the test. Rejecting is the power function, is called the power function of the test. And what is the power of the test? Whatever you evaluate, the probability evaluated at any given value of the parameter mu, for example, mu1. So pi mu1 is called the power of the test at mu1. So the power at mu 60 is nothing but pi 60 is equal to 0.1587. You can, do you have the standard normal table in front of you? Can you check whether this is actually 1.1587?
Yes, sir.
And this is the probability of rejecting H0 when mu equal to 0, when under the null. That's what I mean is when H0 is to under the null, this is the probability of rejecting the null. So this is pretty high, isn't it? It's probability of a type 1 error, and this is called the significance level. This is called the significance level. What you call as alpha in your in your normal discussion.
Hello, sir.
And yeah, as you all know, the normal significance level taken is only either 1% or 5%. In other words, 0.01 or 0.05. Yeah, what is it?
Sir, so just to clarify, power function is the probability of rejecting the null, and power
Yes.
power of the test is the probability of rejecting the null when it is actually true.
Yeah, at a particular value of the
Under
parameter.
the null, under the null.
Of course, under the null. That is always the case. Are we celebrating Diwali? Okay. What is this sound? Acha, Rudra Narayan?
Yes, sir.
How is the connection today? Did you get my mails about your connection problems?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So is it all right now? The situation is better today?
Yes, sir. Today's fine, sir.
Okay. No problem. Okay.
Okay,
Who is it now? Swarabjit Palit?
Yes, sir.
Okay. You're talking for the first time or you talked before?
Sir, I've spoken in bits and pieces with you before regarding questions.
Acha, okay. Yeah. Okay, fine. Devesh?
Good morning, sir.
Morning. So how is it going? Is it better than last year or?
Yes, sir, it's better. It's quite better.
Okay. Why is it so? Because of my handwriting?
Yes, sir, it's one of the reason,
It was
definitely.
long. I know the complaint. I easily just draw it to see. Okay.
So earlier we did not have the PPTs as well. Like earlier you did not send us the handouts.
No, I wanted all of you to go through the books. If this had been an in-person class, I would not have sent the PPTs to these people. No one. Let them go and read the book. I would have shown the PPTs, but I would not have sent the PPTs. Because there is no library, there is no way you can get hold of the books. I'm sending you the PPTs. Okay.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. Shweta Verma.
Yes, sir. Good morning, sir.
Good morning. We have talked before.
Yes, sir. We have talked.
Okay. Now, Mila. Paul, how is it going?
Sir, Paul Babu.
How is it going, Paul?
Sir, it's going comfortable because you are sending all the PPTs, and otherwise it would have been a bit huge trouble, sir.
But how did the test go?
So the test went normal for me. I was comfortable with the questions, but I guess I could have done better had I got a little more of practice.
Where are you placed in Chennai or somewhere?
Sir, in Delhi.
Achha, you are in Delhi. Okay. Now that is what. Okay, आज का discussion हो गया. अभी देखो. This is the power. Now I ask you the other question. This significance level is not heard of. Normally, the significance level that we prefer is either 0.01 or 0.05. So what do you think will happen? Suppose I want to reduce this to 0.01 or 0.05. Okay, what do you think will be the consequences, or what are the consequences? Basically, I'm reducing the type 1 error.
$62 will increase, means 63. Sir, here you have taken rejection reason X bar greater than 62.
Yeah.
So it will become X bar greater than 63 or something like that.
Okay. And the other one other important reason, one other important consequence. If you reduce type 1 error,
Type 2,
I think type 2
will go up, right? Type 2 error will go up. Look at this. The power at mu, the slash is missing. Power at mu equal to 65 is this 0.65. Okay, now we had discussed this at 0.60, and what will be the power of the test when we evaluated at 65? Okay, that the slash is missing there. So at mu equal to 65 is pi 65 is equal to 0.9332. Isn't it quite high? And what is this? Look at the terminology. This is what that makes people confusing. But this is the correct terminology. This is the probability of making a correct decision. That is, always this is probability of type 1 error, and this is the probability of making correct decision. That is, rejecting the null when mu is equal to 65. Note that, and this is a very good decision. Why? 65 is quite large, quite away from the hypothesis, hypothesis of 60. And plus we are very happy to note that it is quite large. So what is the probability of making when mu is equal to 65? The probability 1 minus 0.65 is equal to 0.0668 is the probability of not rejecting the null when mu is equal to 65. That is the probability of type 2 error, and it is comfortably low. Beta is equal to 0.0668. Clearly, the probability beta is equal to 1 minus pi mu of a type 2 error depends on which value the alternative hypothesis takes. Now you understand the role of the alternative hypothesis. Normally, people concentrate only on the null. See the role the alternative hypothesis takes. So it's not that alternative hypothesis does not play any role. It does decide your power function. It does decide your the probability of type 2 error. Paramila, is it okay? Okay. Drishan has not joined today. Okay. Now we shall ask the other question. Frequently, we want the level of significance to be either 0.05 or 0.01. That is 5% or 1%. This is a normal significance level taken by everyone. Acha, Ami Gandhi had some trouble yesterday about this. Gandhi, Rajesh Gandhi.
Yes, sir.
Now, do you follow this now?
Sir, regarding the size of the test and this, right? That
Power function, the size of the test that you were asking yesterday.
Yes, I have a little doubt, but I'll clarify that afterwards.
Okay. Frequently, we want the level of significance to be either 0.05 or 0.01. For example, we want alpha to be 0.05. We cannot use the critical region developed above for x bar 62. Why? Because as somebody pointed out, this is going to increase. Rather, we use x bar greater than or equal to c, where c is such that pi, the power of the test at 60, null 60 equal to 0.05. This is what, now we have fixed this. Last time we did not fix this, we fixed this now. For this given 0.05, what is that x bar that we need? So we have pi 60 is equal to x bar minus 60 by 2 greater than c minus x bar by 2 is equal to 1 minus pi c minus 60 by 2 is equal to 0.5. Now we have to do the inverse of the CDF. The inverse of the CDF is nothing but the quantile. The quantile is something that I did not dwell much on. So, okay, in your standard normal tables, what do you normally do for a given alpha significance level? You read the portion cut off by the random variable on the standard normal curve. Okay, now we are given now the other way around. We are never given the other way around. Pi is the portion cut off is given. What will be the probability of that? So the top one. So in the table on standard normal variables, this is always given. You cannot invert it. So what do? For certain things, for 0.05 and 0.01, you have it, you mug it up or get used to the one tail critical value and the two tail critical values for 0.05 and 0.01. Okay, and okay, in the examination, I will send it along with the question. I'll send it along the question. Okay, so this is from the table on standard normal random variable. What we have done basically is I have inverted it. That's all you need to know. On standard normal random variables, we have c minus 60 by 2 equal to z 0.05, that is z alpha. What is the portion cut off on the standard normal curve for critical level of 0.05, that is 1.645. This should be available in any standard normal table. And from here, we can see c equal to 63.29. So somebody pointed out that the critical region now expand, and that is c is equal to 63.29. Although this reduces alpha, you calculated beta to be equal to 0.1963. So it's quite high now. So what is the only way to reduce both alpha and beta? The only way to reduce both alpha and beta is to increase the sample size. There is no way you can do otherwise. If you reduce one, the other one will go up.
Sir, how did we calculate beta?
How do we calculate zeta?
Beta, 0.1.
How did we calculate beta here? What is beta here?
Probability of type 2 error.
Calculate here.
Okay, 1 minus pi. Okay.
Okay. Is it okay?
Yes, yes.
That's why you calculate beta. Beta is equal to 0.1963. So the only way to reduce both alpha and beta is to increase the sample size. So thus, alpha equal to for this P X bar greater than 5 3 H net. What is this? Oh, okay. This is another example. Sorry. Let's take the strength of the steel bar example. It's another example. Let's see how you test the. Tell me the alpha and the beta for this example.
So in the last line, is there a typo or is it like that? When H0 is true, the normal distribution is with mean 50 and 36 by 16. And when H1 is true, the variance is 36. So there is a typo, right?
Oh, yeah. Remember, it's always n. The n is always there. There is a typo, correct? So what will be the alpha level?
Says alpha 0.
1 minus 5, 2, I was
1
getting.
minus 5.
Yeah, what will that be? Do you have the normal
Point
probability?
0.0228.
8, that is it. So that's not so high, isn't it? That's not very high. So this is the probability of less than 53 under the null, but it's 0.0913. So next go, what is it now? What is a p-value that all of you must have heard of? That's very important now. What is a p-value? The p-value is the smallest level alpha such that we would reject the null hypothesis with the observed data. An experimenter would reject a null hypothesis if and only if the p-value is at most alpha 0. If and only the p-value is at most alpha 0 is using a test with the level of significance alpha naught. These are all the language is a bit complicated. Similarly, an experimenter who wants to level all the 0 test will reject the hypothesis if and only if the p-value is at most alpha 0. What this actually means is this. Doing the power function analysis, all those stuff, your alpha 0 turned out to be from the example that we saw an exponential distribution and uniform distribution. Even alpha 0 turns out to be 0.0667. The p also should be 0.0667. Okay, so then these two you can reject it at the alpha 0 level. So it's possible. What does this mean? What does this mean? Answer this simple question. Answer this simple question. Suppose I fix alpha 0 to be 0.05. That is 5%. Your p turns out to be 0.0227. What does that mean?
That would mean that the area to the right of the area in the rejection region when there's alpha naught is 5%, and if we take the p-value, the area to the right is 2.27%.
0.0227. No, okay, no. This is the literal translation. What does it mean? How do you interpret this result? I fix the alpha 0 to be 0.05, but my experiment turns out that p is 0.0227. What does that mean?
Sir, we have
do not
out of
Probability of making a timing error.
sir, out of 100 tests, the limit is 0.05 times. It should be rejected, but from our test, we have gotten that 0.0 times. If it is wrong, we will be okay with it. So the test is better.
Yeah. See, if the p level, I fix the. Let me put it this way. I fixed alpha 0 level to be 0.05, but my experiment, after doing the experiment, it so happens my analysis tells me, but it should be 0.0227. That means to say I fixed it at 5%, but the experiment will tell me you are wrong, 2.27% only. In other words, I want 5 of the experiments to go wrong out of 100, but the analysis tells me only 2.27 of the 100 experiments can go wrong. So what does that mean? What does it mean in terms of significance? What does it mean in terms of significance? The null. Okay, before we go into the p, let's get the interpretation clear. The set significance level alpha 0 to whatever analysis we did before was 0.05, that's 5%. My analysis, further statistical analysis, tell me p equal to 0.0227. So you cannot conclude anything on the previous set 0.05 significance level. You have to now set it only at 0.0227 significance level. That means the null is not rejected or rejected at the 5% level.
Rejected.
Rejected the 5% level, but accepted at?
Between 5 to 2.27.
Can we say it is accepted at 1% level?
No, sir.
Why?
So it will be rejected, right?
Why?
So because the p-value is, we reject 2.2, 7 samples out of 100. Yeah, Kanika, go ahead.
P previously set level is 0.5%. Now it is 2.27%. You said correctly. Now the null will be rejected. Now previously set is 1%, but the p turns out to be 2.27%. What does that mean?
Oh, then it cannot be rejected.
That is what I asked you. Again, if whenever you have the confusion, have this simple idea. I said 5% means I am allowing 5 out of 100 experiments to go wrong. But P says you can allow only 2.27 number of experiments to go wrong. So your previous set experiment is incorrect. Now, if I had set my previous level of significance to 1%, that means to say the test I conducted is so rigorous, I'm expecting 99% of the time to go correct out of 100 experiment. Only one experiment can go wrong. Your analysis tells you, no, you are too conservative. You allow 2.27 number of experiments to go wrong. Am I right? So you're being too conservative. You get my point now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. This is the way to do this. Okay, now p-value. All these are technical jargon. So if you understand it, is fine. Okay, we shall define a p-value obtained in testing a hypothesis about a mean. Assume that the underlying distribution is normal with unknown mean mu, but known variance sigma square equal to 100. Suppose we are testing the simple null hypothesis H0 mu equal to 60 against a composite alternative H1 mu is greater than 60 with sample mean x bar based on n equal to 52 observation. We obtain the sample mean to be 62.75. 62.75. Okay, the null is 60. My question is, can this 62.75 be considered as only 60 or greater than 60? Do you understand the question?
So can you please repeat the question?
No, this it is there in front of you. You do read it. The sample mean is 62.75. My question is, can this be treated to be equal to 60? If you treat it to be equal to 60, the null will be accepted.
No, sir.
I've not done any example. We have not done any testing so far, but intuitively this means treating 62.75 to be equal to 60 is too much, isn't it?
Yes, sir. And from the standard normal table also, like.
Okay. Now you ask the opposite question. What could be our sample mean so that it could be treated as 60? That's also the opposite question. Suppose it is 60.75.
So what significance level do we take here?
No, I'll come. For now, we shall I'm trying to define a p-value. We shall see the next test. Because even if I give you as 1%, 5%, it's not going to help you. But I'm asking you a very intuitive question. Suppose sample mean is 60.75. As a lay person, would you take it as 60? Look at this. If you compute the probability of obtaining an x bar of that value 62.75 or greater when mu equal to 60, then we obtain what is called the p-value associated with x bar is equal to 62.75.
Sir, what this p-value is representing, I'm not following. Means what this 0.0237 we get. So how we can interpret this?
I'm coming now. Do you understand how we got this p-value? Do you understand now the simple calculation?
Yes, sir. Calculation is okay.
Calculation is okay. Now, what is its p-value? P-value is called the tail probability. Okay, how do you interpret it? That's what I asked the question now. Somebody asked me, suppose normally what do you do? Statistical testing. Any statistical testing, we fix the alpha level to be 0.1. This is exactly what I said. This is, see, what is p-value? In general, it is the smallest level alpha 0. What is alpha 0 in our parlance, in our discussion?
1%
Level of significance.
No. Significance level. Significance level. Okay. Alpha 0 is a significance level. Am I right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So what is P? This is the smallest significance level such that we would reject the null hypothesis of observed data. Okay. Now next question. In normal experiments, we fix the significance level to be 1% or 5%. Understood? Hello?
Sir, can you please move a slide ahead? I have a doubt in the calculation.
Is it okay? What is p-value? You understand? Somebody asked me a question about what is p-value. Was it Saurav?
No, sir.
Hari, yeah, what is it? What is the p-value now? You tell me what is the p-value? P-value is nothing but the significance level at which you can reject the hypothesis, null hypothesis. Is it okay?
Yes, sir.
Given the observed data. Okay?
Yes, sir. So if the probability will be greater than 0.0237 in the given example, then we will reject the null hypothesis, right?
No, yeah, 0.0 greater than, yes. 0.02 is greater than, yes, that is this is the smallest level. This is the smallest level. You don't have to worry about the greater point of view. This is the smallest level, threshold level at which you would reject the null hypothesis. If it has to be, if it happens to be 0.3%, that is fine. That is the smallest level at which you would reject the null hypothesis. Whatever the p-value the test throws, that will be the smallest level at which you can reject the null hypothesis. Okay.
Okay, sir.
Okay. Now my question is, Hari B. You are Hari, no?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Continue with B. I'm asking a question. Normally, what do you do in? Have you done basic statistics before?
Yes, sir.
Okay. What do you do normally in an inference in statistics about the significance level?
We take it 1%.
1% or 5%. Am I right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now answer this question. Your calculated p-value is much less than 5%.
Much less. Okay, sir.
Okay. So what will be your significance level now? You have to drop that 5%. You have to keep this p-value as your significance level. Is okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Means,
yeah.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now suppose the other way around. You had fixed it at 1% and p happens to be greater than 1. What will you do?
So we have to take p-value as the level of significance.
Whatever that is there, that is going to take. Okay. Only thing is 1% also you can do, but you'll have a conservative test. You can retain either the p-value or redo the whole test having 1.01 as the p and do the inverse and then adjust the critical region. You get my point now?
Yes, sir.
What people normally do is the following. They keep it 1%, 5%. They do the experiment. Whatever p-value comes, that will be my significance level. That's it. There's no correction needed, nothing. Okay. Is it okay? Narayan, Hari?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. Somebody asked that this slide?
No, sir, the next one.
Next one, okay.
So sir, here I'm not able to get what's the difference between the p-value and the type 1 error. I mean, the p-value is exactly the same way we calculate the type 1 error or the.
What was type? Okay, now you tell me. What was type 1 error? What was type 1 error? Type 1 error. The significance level is called the type 1 error. Am I right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, no, that is exactly what I'm repeatedly telling you. What happens in the normal practice is we fix the significance level to be 0.05.
Okay.
Okay, but what should not be done? This is done by calculating that using the power function. That is 0.1587. Okay, is much higher than the normal significance level that we fix. Frequently, we find the level of significance to be only 0.05 and 0.01. Am I right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, now this significance level is pretty high. So I want to reduce this. We want to reduce this. How do you reduce this? This is what you reduce. This is how you reduce. Now what your question is, yes, you are right. This is nothing but the probability of type 1 error, significance level, probability type 1 error. And in normal experiments, we always fix the probability type 1 error to be either 0.01 or 0.05, okay, and go ahead. But nowadays, that fixing thing has been done away with because of increased computing power and all those stuff. The packages will calculate the tail end probability or the significance level that your experiment needs. Understood? So the practice of fixing that 1%, 5% significance level has been done away with, and people go by this p-value. To come back to your question, yes, p-value is nothing but the significance level. Okay?
Yes, sir. So, sir, when we compare that whether we should reject the null or the null shouldn't be rejected, we compare the p-value with the alpha which is originally assumed. Is it?
Yeah, that is normally done. Yes, because that is always some sort of a reference point for us. 1% and 5%. Okay.
Okay, sir.
No, normally people do not do it anymore. They just give this p-value and read it to the readers to interpret this. You just give this p-value and leave it. That's it. You say p-value is okay. Well, then now what is happening here? The question of whether significance or non-insignificance comes here, isn't it? Now here is where statistical science is a bit wishy-washy. What do they say? If the p-value is closer to 0, you reject the null. If the p-value is farther away from 0, that is more towards 1, you accept the null. You get the point now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, having thrown this, having given this 0.0237, some of the authors tell you if p is equal to 0.0237, it is rejected at the 5% level, but accepted at the 1% level. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so now the practice is you just give the p-value and keep quiet.
Okay, sir.
Your
Hello,
question?
sir.
Yeah.
Sir, one thing, this 62.75, how is it how the econometricians or statisticians they take these values?
This
Like
is a sample
for
value.
the
This is a sample value. This is a sample value.
no,
See,
whether what point would it take? Like after that they will reject like x bar greater than equal to 62.75. This 62.75, how did they take?
That's what I'm telling you. We have a sample mean. This is a sample mean. (62.75) is a sample mean. Hello?
Yes, sir.
Sample means a sample mean. Your question should be the other way around. How do we fix it 60? Isn't it?
So my question is, how do we know the test rule? Like, if it is greater than this, then we reject. If it is less than this, then we accept. That threshold level, like for
That
the
this is the test is all about. Okay. So my question is the following. Your sample mean is 62.75. Can you treat this to be equal to 60? That is my question. How do you test it? Isn't it? How do you test this? Even for a lay person, treating 62.75 equal to 60, it is incorrect. For a you give it a statistician, what is he going to give you? He is going to give you a probability level at which you can treat 62.75 to be equal to 60. What is the probability level? Is 0.0237.
Okay, sir, understood.
Okay, what is the probability? Only with such a low probability, you can accept 62.75 to be equal to 60. This is the literal non-technical way of saying this. Okay. Who is this now? You asked, somebody asked who is the one that asked me the question?
Sami.
Yami.
Ami.
Okay. Now, suppose I ask you the other question. Suppose I ask you the other question. Do you see the sample mean now 62.75?
Yes, sir.
What could be the sample mean which could be treated to be equal to 60? As a lay person, you tell me. Even to a lay person, 62.75 equal to 60 is incorrect. To a lay person, what could be the sample mean that can be okay treated to be equal to 60?
So anything like in the neighborhood of 60, like very close to 60.
Say 60.5?
60.5.
60.5 can be treated to be equal to 60. Okay, you think that you don't even need a statistical test to see whether 60.5 can be treated to be equal to 60. Am I right? That's your intuition, correct? Okay. Let's see how correct your intuition is. Now 0 point. So this tells you you can treat 62.75 equal to 60 only at a very low probability as 0.0237. If this p-value is small, we tend to reject the hypothesis. This is what I gave it as. What should I say? The statisticians, all statistics book only tell this. If p-value is closer to 0, you reject the null. P-value is away from 0 towards 1, you accept the null. Okay. Now you ask the other question. For example, rejecting H0 means equal to 60, the p-value is less than or equal to 0.05 is exactly the same as rejecting H0 if the p-value is less than or equal to 0.05 is exactly the same as rejecting H0 if x is equal to, this is the upper limit, 62.281. Here p-value is 0.237 less than alpha is equal to 0.05 and x bar 62.75 is greater than 62.281. We know that the p-value can be thought of as that tail probability under H0 of the distribution of the statistic, here x bar, beyond the observed value of the statistic. See the graph below for the p-value associated with this example. The p-value is 0.0237. That is the tail probability.
Sir, but this is accepted at 1% level, right?
Correct. Who is the Drishan?
Yes.
You joined late.
Yes, sir. I was not well, so I woke up late.
What happened? What happened?
Sir, I don't know. Last night I felt very sick. I vomited and a lot of things.
First, New Year celebration. You must have taken something.
No.
No? Is it all right? Any fever?
I don't know. I think food poisoning.
No fever, I suppose.
No.
Okay, good. Take care. No, this is definitely accepted to 1% level. That's what. This is definitely rejected the conventional significance level of 5%, but it is also accepted at the other conventional significance level of 1%. You can conveniently say that. Okay, so instead of writing all those nonsense, what nowadays people do, they just report this p-value and leave it to the reader to interpret it any which way he or she wants. My question is, what is that x bar that I have calculated next?
So the point up to which we can take the mean to be equal to 60, I think.
Read the second bullet point. Read the second bullet point.
Initially, with level of significance of 5%, the x bar means it was 62.281. Means this was the critical point. Now with p-value of given, it became 62.75.
Now, p-value is 62.75. We checked the p-value or the significance level. Suppose we sample mean is 62.75. That turned out to 0.0237. What will be the sample mean? What would be the sample mean if you want the p0 to be equal to 0.05? See 62.281. It has to come down. 62.75 was much greater than 62.281. Okay, now I ask the other question. Suppose the sample mean is 62.281. Suppose the sample mean is instead of 62.75, it is 62.281. What will be this p-value?
0.05.
0.05.
0.05. Now you get my point. Amy Gandhi?
Yes, sir.
Now you tell me the answer. Now you tell me the answer. Suppose you fix the significance level to be at least 0.05 initially. You know what the sample mean could be. You said the sample mean to be at least to be accepted at the 5% level. You said 60.5. No, you don't have to be that low. It is enough if it is 62.281. If it is 62.281, it could be on the boundary of 5%. This is what this expression tells you, isn't it?
Yes.
Okay, so this is what expression is. You don't have to be 60.5 to accept it as the null for mu is equal to 60. You don't have to be that low. It is enough if you come as low as 62.281. Suppose it is 62.181, probably it will be accepted at the 5% level. That null of mu is equal to 60 can be accepted. Okay, so this is exactly what we'll see. You practice all problems. We'll also take some problems later on. I'll send some practice questions also. You do all this stuff, but you have to keep only the following ideas in mind. What is a type 1 error? There's nothing but a significance level. What's a type 2 error? The probability of rejecting the true null. Okay, probability of accepting a true null. Sorry, probability of accepting a false null. And the p-value. This is very important. Somebody gives a p-value of 0.0237. That's it. You have the conventional significance level of 1% and 5%. You immediately interpret if p-value is 0.0237. It is rejected at the conventional 5% level, but is accepted at the other conventional level 1%. Okay. So if you are already before this is the example. Somebody asked me the example of alpha and p. I think Drishan. Somebody asked me the difference between alpha and p. Alpha is something you fix before the experiment. P is something you get after the experiment. Can we say this? So if the p-value is
One clarification. So normally statisticians, do they fix alpha, then find p and then compare, or fix p to be alpha and then find the relevant x bar and then they compare?
No, they don't do anything. As I told you, they report the p-value and leave it to you to evaluate. Suppose you are a very conservative guy, what will you do? Very conservative person, what will you do?
So I'll keep it less, like 1%.
Oh, 1%. Okay. Now one person, you are a conservative person, and you run the experiment. Oh, I can go wrong 2.37% of the time. Okay, so you are satisfied. My experiment is not that bad. You stay with the result. Okay. Suppose you are not such a conservative person, I can allow even 10 experiment out of 100, 10 out of 100 experiments to go wrong, and you to a shock, you get a p-value of 0.0237. Then you have to revise your methodology. You have to revise your whole procedure. Am I right? So you can, your experiment tells you can go wrong only 2.37 times and not the 10 times that you had imagined. So you have been quite liberal in fixing the significance level. That's what it means. Okay. So having said that, how do we do this? It's very convenient. It's very convenient. Let me tell you my experience about the unit root test statistic in time series. We normally come across this kind of value, p-value is 0.0237. If you want a unit root, then we'll say, oh, it is accepted to 1% level and take it. If you don't want a unit root, it is rejected at the 5% level, there is no unit root. Now you see the now you see how the profession goes. So you give the p-value and you say unit root is rejected at the 5% level. People will decide, okay, how much credibility, how much credence should I attach to his results? This is a strong statement to make, but I will make. Do you understand now? How many of you took time series 1?
Sir, we did.
Kumar, who is it? Kumar?
Oh, sir, you are asking the seniors.
Drishan, you have done time series before?
Basic time series.
No, some of the retakers. Paramila. Did you take time series 1?
All of us took time series.
Time series 1. So
yes,
this is the example I'm giving you, unit root example. So this is how. Yeah.
Is it a good thing to manipulate the interpretation of alpha to suit our conclusion?
That is always done. That is always done. For example, I can, sometimes this kind of results are quite problematic. So we conveniently do this, but that is why if I am the referee, I'm refereeing a paper, I'll always ask for the p-value. So deciding on the p-value, I will decide whether this person has interpreted correctly. If my significance is 1%, 5%, the p-value turns out to be 0.48, and this person says, okay, treat it to be 5%, I pardon him. If p-value is 0.027, that he says that no, it's okay, it can be accepted at 5% level, I'm not going to pardon him. I'll reject this paper. It's accepted only at the 1% level. So you go and reinterpret the whole result. That's what we do. Okay, so that this is the importance of p-value. You report the p-value and leave it to the reader to interpret it. Okay, if the reader will tell you, reader will decide the p-value, this fellow has got a p-value of 0.0237, still he accepted at the 5% level, you know how much credibility you should attach to his findings. If the p-value is 0.0237, he said, oh, it is accepted only at the 1% level, and then concludes the credibility is much stronger about his results. This is the only thing I can tell you, Kumar.
Yes, I understand.
Okay.
It's better to just leave things at p-value only.
Yeah, give the p-value and leave it to the reader.
Yes, sir.
Okay, that's the best way. That is the best way to do research. Okay. See the graph below associated with p-value. Have I sent this PPT? No, not sent this PPT. Consider the numerical example of testing hypothesis about the mean. If the alternative with the two-sided hypothesis, mu not equal to 0, that is only one-sided. Okay, what will happen now? The p-value would have been doubled. 0.237, that is, then the p-value would be 0.047 because now we include both the tails. If mu is not equal to 60, it could be 65 or 55. So we simply double the p-value and we include both the tails. So this is called a two-tail test. That was the one-tail test. This is a two-tail test or two-sided test. We include both the tails cut off by the p-value. This is how you do. How exactly is a statistical testing procedure conducted? We shall explain this with the example we just saw. Suppose you want to conduct a test about the mean of a random sample from a normal distribution with unknown mean but known variance. What do? We sample first from a normal distribution. The null hypothesis is generally of the form H0. It's generally of the form. This is the problem. This exactly is the problem. Null hypothesis for most of the studies mu equal to mu 0. In your regression example, beta 1 equal to 0 or beta 1 equal to 1, for example. This problem is beta 1 is greater than 1, okay, you can test. Beta 1 is less than 1, you can test. If the null is between an interval, beta minus 3 less than or equal to beta 1 less than or equal to 5, this is the problem. You have to go through how do you test the significance, how do you decide the significance level. That was precisely the example that I gave you when we discussed the power function. For a normal distribution, we can do. For any distribution, you can do. I'm repeatedly saying why I did the power function in a different way, because that is normally not done in even in research. I have not seen this. I have seen the simple null mu equal to mu 0 or rho equal to 1, some such thing. Okay, so that's what he said. The normal practice is the null hypothesis will be generally of the form mu equal to mu 0. Okay, so there are three possibilities of interest for a composite alternate hypothesis. What is that? Mu is greater than mu 0, mu is less than 1, but mu has changed, but it is not known whether it has increased or decreased, which leads to the two-sided alternate hypothesis. Mu is simply not equal to mu 0, which can be greater than 0 or less than mu 0. Sorry, greater than mu 0 or less than mu 0. What do you do next? A random sample is taken from the distribution and an observed sample mean x bar that is close to mu 0. This is very intuitive only. Observed sample mean x bar is close to mu 0. Suppose a null hypothesis. The closeness of x bar to mu 0 is measured normally in terms of standard deviations. Sigma by root n when sigma is known. When sigma is known, underline the word. Sigma is known. Okay, so a measure that is sometimes called the standard error of the mean. When testing hypothesis about the mean of a normal distribution, it is traditional to rewrite the test in terms of the statistic. That means we are simply standardizing it so that this will be a standard normal random variable. Capital Z will be a standard normal random variable. You can refer to the standard normal random tables to conclude, okay, to rewrite the test in terms of the statistic. The critical regions at a significance level alpha, what all we have seen, I'm just typing it, okay, I'm just explaining it in words. The critical regions at a significance level alpha for the three respective alternate hypotheses would be Z greater than or equal to Z alpha, Z less than or equal to minus Z alpha, that is the left tail test. That this is the composite hypothesis. Mod Z is greater than or equal to Z alpha by 2. This Z alpha by 2 is nothing but the two-tail test. So you have to get half of it on the right tail and half of it on the left tail. In terms of x bar, these critical regions become x bar is greater than mu 0 plus Z alpha plus sigma by root n. X bar is less than or equal to mu 0 minus Z alpha sigma by root n. The mod of this is greater than or equal to Z alpha 2 by the. This is how you calculate, you convert all these things. The underlying assumption is that distribution is normal, is sigma square known. Again, I'm repeating it. Okay. In the case, the sigma square is unknown. Accordingly, we now take a more realistic position. Now I'm relaxing the assumption sigma square is unknown. Accordingly, we now take a more realistic position and assume that the variance sigma square is unknown. Suppose our null hypothesis is mu is equal to mu 0 and the two-sided alternate hypothesis is mu is not equal to mu 0. How do we proceed in this case? Testing the null when mean is of course not known originally that you're estimating. Now the added complication is the variance is also not known. How do we proceed? We shall proceed by first constructing what is called a confidence interval. What are confidence intervals?
So with certain level of probability, we can say that our sample statistics or parameter that we are taking will lie in that interval.
Okay. What is a confidence interval? Confidence intervals for means. What are confidence intervals? They provide a method of adding more information. This is what is called interval estimation. Okay. Normally you are used to what is called point estimation. What is a point estimation? Beta 1 equal to, beta 2 equal to. Now we are not going to say this beta 1 equal to. What is the probability that beta 1 or beta 1 hat, sorry, beta 1 hat will lie between a lower bound and an upper bound? That is what is called an interval estimation. Interval estimation. Okay, now you tell me, which one do you prefer? Interval estimation or a point estimation?
Interval estimation, it is easier.
No, it is easier.
Because we have a but if we want an accurate result, we will prefer point. If we want an accurate result, but it is easier in practice to use interval estimation because it provides a range.
Okay. Okay, I'll leave it to you because interval estimation, point estimation, and there is something called density estimation. I don't know how many of you know that. Density interval estimation and density forecast. Point estimation, point forecast. Interval estimation, interval forecast. Density estimation, density forecast. Density forecast we will be using what is called a probability integral transform. We have done this. Do you remember, guys? Probability integral transform, PIT. It is there somewhere in the notes. Okay, what are confidence interval? They provide a method of adding more information to an estimated theta hat when we wish to estimate the unknown parameter theta. We can find interval AB, what that we think has high probability of containing theta. The length of such an interval gives us an idea of how closely we can estimate theta. Now let me ask a very commonplace question, common sense question. Suppose you go for confidence interval estimation. How should this interval be wide or as narrow as possible?
As narrow as possible.
Narrow as possible.
As narrow. This interval should be as narrow as possible. You see any result, people are given confidence interval. The confidence interval are wide. There is not much credibility you can attach to that result. If the confidence intervals are very wide, it is something like catch-all term. Everything goes. Okay, so this is the first lesson you learn about confidence interval. Your confidence interval must be as narrow as possible. So that is going to give an idea of how closely we can estimate theta. Okay, given a random sample from a normal distribution, we shall now consider the closeness of x bar, the unbiased estimator of the unknown mu, by constructing confidence intervals. To do this, we use a result that x bar. Why am I giving this confidence interval for variance unknown? From here, I am going to derive a statistic. All of us know the statistic, which can be used to test any hypothesis involving x bar, the sample mean. What is the statistic? The statistic is nothing but t statistic. Okay, that is why I'm giving the confidence interval. In all books, you can see this is the way this is the route they take. Okay, one thing that I have to tell you, probably that I'll be using certain terms which I have not explained so far. What is that estimation? What is an estimator? I have not explained. And somewhere down the line, I have used this before, an unbiased estimator. What is an unbiased estimator? I have not explained anything. But in statistics books, I think I did tell you in the last class. In statistic textbook, there is a long chapter on estimation after central limit theorem and the testing of hypothesis. Okay. What we have done, we have jumped to that ocean. We have completely jumped that ocean. We have not done anything at all. Okay, so to teach testing of hypothesis, it is ideal to do the estimation before. Now, in the statistics lecture, they will do that. Since ours is an econometrics lecture, I'm giving you the statistical foundations initially and then going to the estimation. Okay, so in that sense, from a statistician's point of view, not doing the estimation before testing of hypothesis is incorrect. But for us, an econometrician, it is okay. Okay, now this is why I'm saying this. I may inadvertently use unbiased estimators and all those stuff. By constructing confidence intervals, To do this, use a result that x bar equal to this. We have seen this many times. To construct what is called confidence interval for the unknown parameter mu. When first we should construct this confidence interval, assuming that variance sigma square is known. Okay. For the probability 1 minus alpha, we can find the number z alpha by 2 because this is a composite hypothesis that we are taking. Z alpha by 2 from the table on standard normal distribution function such that minus z alpha by 2, this standardized variable is less than z alpha is equal to 1 minus alpha. The alpha is a small number between 0 and 1. We can find number z alpha by 2 from the table on standard normal such that is this. For example, if 1 minus alpha is equal to 0.95, then z alpha 2 is equal to 0.025, that is 1.96 on both the tails. If 1 minus alpha is 0.90, that is, we are taking the 10% thing. So the tail will be alpha by 2, 0.05 on the right side, 0.05 on the left side. Now you see the critical value, 1.645. These are some numbers that you should mug up. Two-tail 5%, two-tail critical values is 1.96 on both sides. Two-tail 10% critical values will be 1.645 on both sides. Okay. So that is what you have to remember. So when I say 1.96, I've used the 5% level. Invariably, I have used only a two-tail test. All these things you have to get used to. Now, recalling that sigma greater than 0, we see the following inequality equivalent. You go through this very simple adjustment only. Now here, what is the upper bound?
X bar plus Z alpha by 2 into sigma by root n.
Okay. Because I need this. What is upper bound? What is the lower bound? When I discuss the one-sided confidence interval. Thus, since the probability of the first of the inequality is 1 minus alpha, that is this, the first one, the probability of the last must also be 1 minus alpha because the latter is true if and only if the former is true. So that is, we have 1 minus alpha. So the probability that random interval includes the unknown mean mu is 1 minus alpha. Go through this because I'm going to ask you next, how do you interpret the very important question?
Hello, sir. I have a question.
Yeah.
So, suppose we have two models. Okay. In first model, we take our null hypothesis is that mu is less than mu1, and alternate is mu is greater than mu1. And in the second model, we take just opposite, that mu is greater than mu1 as null, and mu is less than mu1 as our alternate. And in both the model, we try to fix the level of alpha and try to maximize the power of the test. That is, try to minimize type 2 error. So, but in both the cases, our in the first in both the cases, our null is different. So how are we going to interpret both the models?
Your null is, from the way I understand the question, the power in the first thing should be equal to the 1 minus thing of the second one. Because your null is interchanged now. Your null is not changed. Your null is null and alternatives are interchanged now.
Yes, sir. Sir,
okay. So if we take the first one, in the first case, suppose the null has been rejected, the alternative has been accepted. Why do you need to do the second one?
Sir, basically, I want to know how do we take our null? How do we choose our null hypothesis?
Okay, that's a good question. That's what I asked somebody. Why do you? Somebody asked the question on alternative. Nobody asked me the question on the null of rho is equal to null. What do you fix null to be equal to? For example, I say mu equal to 60. Where did the 60 come from? Is that your question?
Yes, sir, exactly.
Okay, that comes from the null is going to come. Okay, let me answer this question. We have done basic regression, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, what do you do in basic regression? You have to explain the variation in the dependent variable with the help of some independent variables, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, now you know for sure certain factors definitely influence the dependent variable.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
We want their coefficient to be different than 0.
No, I'll come to that. I'm coming there. Suppose 3 variable. I gave the example of income consumption. When you are trying to explain consumption, the one variable that will certainly be there on the right hand side is income. Correct?
Yes, sir.
There could be other variables. Somebody said interest rate, somebody said something else. Okay, in this, suppose you want to add price level in some other country, some Timbuktu or something. Or you want to, you are not very sure, a particular variable, whether it influences consumption or not. What is the correct way of doing an econometric exercise? Econometric exercise tells you the following. When you suspect a particular independent variable is influencing or can explain the variations in the dependent variable or not, what is the best way to do? You include it in the regression. Okay, Devesh, you have to keep on saying yes, otherwise I won't know whether you're following.
Yes, sir, I'm getting.
Okay, now you have conducted the experiment. There is some value, coefficient value for that particular variable, which you are not very sure to be included in the independent variable list or not. Now you tell me what will you do? Now you have to do the testing of hypothesis. Now what will you do? Suppose there is a fourth variable when you are explaining consumption, okay, taste and habits, whether habit decides your consumption. You want to test this. There is a coefficient on habit. What will you do? What will you do?
So basically, we want to know whether our the coefficient, beta coefficient is different from 0 or not.
Why do you want to have 0? Your question is equal to 0 or not equal to 0, isn't it?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Now your question comes, why should you have the null to be equal to 0?
Yes, sir.
Okay, now you want to answer this question, whether habit influences consumption. That is my question.
It does.
Okay, suppose there is some other variable. Suppose the theory says habit does not influence consumption. Habit does not influence consumption at all. Okay, you have estimated regression model with habit as one of the independent variables. You have got some coefficient. Now you tell me you are going by theory, and what will be your null be? What will your null be?
Our null will be like it explains the changes.
Theory tells you habit does not play a part at all in consumption. What will your null be now?
Sir, it should be just opposite of what our theory says.
Oh, no. Your null is normally fixed according to theory. Okay, theory comes only by assuming what is called standardized facts and consumption. Your theory says that the habit does not play a role in explaining consumption. What will you normally do? Now you put the coefficient of null to be equal to 0. You would test whether the coefficient governing habit is equal to 0. You get me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, this is how you decide the null. The null hypothesis should be this value or it should not be this value. The first thing that is going to help you is theory. Okay. You would never ever check whether the coefficient governing income is equal to 0 or not. If you do this, you have no sense of econometrics. Can I say this?
Yes, sir.
So this is your question. Coming back to the original question, how do we decide mu equal to something? The first help you should look for is theory. Theory tells you consumption is influenced by 1, 2, 3. Okay, theory is not very sure about 4, 5, 6. What do? I'm going to include it in include 4, 5, 6 in my regression, and the result that I'm getting will be interpreted accordingly. I'm going to say, okay, I'm following theory with the coefficient governing fourth variable equal to 0. I'm going to test it. It is accepted. Theory is accepted. 5, 6 also 0 accepted. Theory is accepted. So what do you conclude? The given data follows the set theory, existing theory. Suppose you get some result opposite to what is existing in theory, you report it and just keep quiet. You can't develop your own theory. Theory is something that is done on standardized facts or empirical facts. Okay, so what is a standardized facts or empirical facts? Empirical facts or standardized facts are something that have been observed by econometricians and analysts and researchers all over the world over an extended period of time in all types of market conditions. Then only it becomes an empirical fact, a standardized fact, then it becomes a theory. Okay, so that is why I always say Keynes' book is called The General Theory of Income Employment, because why? He said that consumption is a function of income. No matter what, no time period, no market, no country, this is true, universally true. Then and only then it becomes theory. Understand? So Devesh, you include a variable and which turns out to be significant and which is against existing theory, you just report it and keep quiet. Understood? Oh boy, it's a long winding explanation. Oh, rest of the class, are they all awake or gone somewhere?
Sir.
Drishan.
Sir, I have a question regarding that the question you gave us for homework yesterday.
Yeah.
So you asked us to find the power function of the test and the power of the test, right? So I have found out the power function of the test, which was 1.5 by theta to the power n, and the supremum of the power function was 3 by 4 to the power n.
Yeah.
So that is the is that the size of the test or is that the power of the test?
Power of the test.
Okay, so the supremum of power function, that is the power of the test, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So, but in your slides, you've written this: the size of the test is the supremum of the power of the test. So I got confused in that case because I might be wrong here, that size of the test is not the power of the test in my opinion.
Size of the test, remember, size of the test. Oh, this is what I did. This example tells you, no? Size of the test is nothing but the power function evaluated at a particular parameter value.
Yes, and the maximum of that, the supremum of that is the power of the test.
That will give you the significance level. Supremum will give you the significance level.
Yes, so the
supremum of this will give you the significance levels, Drishan.
Yeah, okay. So 3 by 4 to the power n, that is the significance level.
Yeah, suppose you put for various n, suppose your n is equal to 100, you calculated that will be the significance level.
Okay.
Okay, so suppose you are conducting a test and what should be a significance level? That should be a significance level. That's it.
Okay, then sir, what is the power of the test then?
Power of the test is now you can you have evaluated so you have evaluated theta is equal to 3, for example, there in that example.
Theta equal to 2.
Theta equal to 2. You evaluated some other theta, and the resulting example, that will be the power of the test.
Sir, I have one more question regarding this, sir.
One minute. Is this Kanika?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, just hold
Sir,
on. Drishan.
Yes.
Can you see this slide right now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. As mentioned before, pi mu is a power function, isn't it?
Pi, yes.
Okay, pi mu is a power function. Suppose I put the power function of the test. Suppose mu is equal to mu1 and evaluate this probability. This will be your power of the test.
Yes, but here there is only one mu in H0, right?
Yeah, mu in H0. So let me tell you. For example, when mu is 65, see the power.
Oh, okay, so like what I found, 1 minus that is the power of the test.
Yes.
Okay, now it makes sense.
Okay. Kanika, what is it?
Sir, power is determined at what level of mu? That mu should be at mu should lie in the alternative hypothesis, right?
Correct. Let me tell you.
Mu1 should.
Power. Okay, you somebody said correctly. That's what I said. Alternative is very important. It's not the null alone that is important. Why is alternative important? Because that is going to decide the power of the test. You get my point, Kanika?
Yes, sir. But for example, if the alternative is mu1, like mu greater than 30, suppose, then what level of mu will we take to find the power? For example, if the alternative, the null is mu is equal to 30 and the alternative is mu greater than 30, suppose, then at what level will we find the power? Because we are taking at a particular level of mu. So I had this query.
Oh, that way I see your you are going to evaluate it only the power function is evaluated the null, remember. You see here you want to test, look at this. Against the alternative mu is greater than 60, something close to this?
Yes, sir. Sir, power is basically the correctly rejecting the null.
Look at this. Power function, we know that pi mu is equal to greater than 60 is simply this.
Sir, I want to ask you about the power and not the power function, sir.
Evaluate the power at various values greater than 60. That's what I can tell you.
Okay.
From the power function, you have to evaluate, for example, mu is equal to 60, mu is greater than 60. Okay, this is exactly the null, suppose, for example, isn't it? This is, it can be anything. Okay, now precisely I'm saying mu greater than 60. Now you calculate the power function and you evaluate the power at various values of your choice. Here I have evaluated 60 itself. Here I have evaluated 65.
So whatever, like it is based on our choice that whatever mu we take, we can just find out the power at that.
Yes, I'm giving you the function. You evaluate the power of that test at various choices of your theta.
Okay.
So power, that is why I said the alternative is important, isn't it? Because your alternative is mu is greater than 0. It could be 61. Here I evaluated 60 itself. Here I'm evaluating at 65. You can evaluate at 63, 64, 65.
Any mu which lies in the alternative hypothesis, we can evaluate the power at that.
Now you tell me. Now you see the common sense term. What will be pi 61?
Pi 61.
It will be definitely less than 0.9332.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Because it is very close to the null.
Yes.
What will be pi 70?
It will be more than pi 65.
Definitely as close to 1 as possible. As close to 1 as possible, isn't it?
Yes.
Isn't it?
Because yes, power gives the ability to reject the null. Yes, yes.
It
Yes.
will be as close to 1 as possible. So what is the common sense? You are saying that null is equal to 60 and you're taking mu is equal to 70. What rubbish. There is no way you're going to accept mu is equal to 60 at this point level. Okay, that this alternative.
Okay, sir. Yes,
okay,
sir.
now that's the question. So power is one that you are going to calculate given the power function for various parameters that you have in mind.
Okay, sir. Yes, sir. I got it, sir. Thank you, sir.
So just to clarify, we find the power function, and then the level of significance of the test is the supremum of the power function where theta lies in the H0 region.
Yes, yes, H0 exactly.
And the power of the test is 1 minus the power function where the theta lies in the rejection region.
Correct.
And we can choose this theta with like whatever we want.
That's what I answer Kanika's question. You can choose your theta and evaluate the power of the test.
Okay, sir. Is there any optimal theta like which gives us the best result?
No, that how can I say that? If you have an optimal theta, that is as good as having the population parameter, knowing the population parameter.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay, sir. Thank you.
Yeah.
So I got the difference between power and power function, but then what was the size of the test? I'm still confused.
Size of the test is your type 1 alpha.
All right, sir.
Okay. Now let me tell you. Now you ask me a good question. In the profession, there's always a fight between size and the significance level. Okay. For this class, even last class, the same problem happened. The significance level is the size of the test. Is it okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay, done with. Okay, but I have a section which describes the size and significance. There is definitely a difference, but it seems to be confusing to many people. Just leave it. So the alpha will be the significance level is called the size of the test. Is it okay?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. Now it is. Oh, you have a class at 11:30 now?
Yes, sir.
Now where are we? Where are we? Here we are conference intervals for me. I'll take it up tomorrow. Hello.
So Monday. Okay.
Monday. Tomorrow I meant Monday only. Tomorrow I meant Monday only. Abhishek Kumar. Who is this? Abhishek Kumar. Have we talked before?
No, sir.
We are talking for the first time.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Where are you? Delhi based or where are you?
No, sir. I'm in Ranchi, Jharkhand.
Okay. So how is it going? How did you do the first test? Midterm?
It was okay. One question was a bit tricky, but it was okay.
Is there any connection issues, connectivity issues, power problem and all those stuff in your area?
Yes, connection issue. My screen freezes most of the time, but I have to go for the recordings every now and then.
Acha, okay. Otherwise it's okay, right?
Yes, sir.
You get the PPT. You can read the PPT. You get the PPTs on time.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. Hari Prakash, we have met. Who is this Krishna Kumar? Krishna Kumar, have we talked before?
Yes, no, sir. We are talking for the first time.
Okay, where are you from?
Chhapra, Bihar, sir.
Acha. So how is the connectivity issue and all those stuff? Because people are facing connectivity issue and load shedding and all those stuff.
I am in town, so it's fine for me. There is no power cut problem. Sometimes connectivity.
Okay. Otherwise, how did the midterm go?
Midterm was fine. Only with it was fine. Only with time constant and other.
Okay.
It was first time, so I don't arrange somewhere.
So you thought it was a long paper.
I couldn't think. I mean, it was the first time in this mode.
Okay, fine. Okay, fine. Okay, guys, we'll meet you on Monday. Take care. Again, Happy New Year. Take care. We'll meet on Monday and finish off this remaining portion of inference. Hopefully, I think it will take the entire lecture. And if there is time, we'll definitely take up econometrics portion. Okay. Okay. Bye-bye. The class ends now.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, sir.